If God has a plan for everyone, why is his plan for some children to die from cancer? God wants some people to climb on trains and get shocked by power lines, dive headfirst into a shallow pool and drown, and shit themselves to death on the john. Sick sense of humor if anything. People here are not really answering your question. I'm not religious, but I do have a background in disability studies. Many people from all over the world believe that illness or disability is a punishment for the person who is disabled, sometimes for something they did in a past life, or a punishment for someone close to them such as their caregivers, almost always a parent or other family member. Some people believe that disabled or sick people exist to teach the rest of us virtues, such as to be grateful for what we have or to be compassionate for those less fortunate. So they are merely props to support larger pieces of the grand scheme of things. My close friend died of brain cancer when we were in middle school. This was a major factor in my becoming an atheist. Her mother was, and still is, very religious. She believes my friend, her daughter, is one of God's children and we all meet God again when we die and live in his care. So her daughter was just called back into God's arms earlier than most. Humans are desperate to rationalize things that don't make sense, or cause us immeasurable pain. I think if my child was sick for years and suffered almost every minute of her life since her diagnosis, I would also prefer to believe that she was granted eternal bliss and was cared for by God in heaven. Go back to the beginning. Adam and Eve naked in the garden. He gave them free will and said don't do this one thing. Completely all-seeing, omnipotent being somehow didn't see far enough into the future or visually watch as his right-hand man went behind his back and got them to do the thing. And dude got mad? How could he have not known this was going to end up this way? After all, it was his plan. Right? His favorite two creatures. Just two and he still couldn't keep track. Anyways, long story short, it's the devil's fault you got to wear clothes. Use that the next time that you're in church. Or at a soccer game. Because he doesn't have a plan for everyone. People just tell themselves that to feel like their lives matter. And if you're real and had the power to have a plan for everyone, then he's an evil son of a bitch. Try explaining otherwise to any parent who has lost a baby or child to cancer. I've known too many, and I wouldn't dare try. Yusuo Nayat. Clockmaker theory. The plan is simply the design. It's autonomous. It runs without intervention. Like a clock, it was set forth and does its own thing. Well, if God is real, then he'll be getting a war if I get to heaven. Parental abuse, starvation as an adult, severe and uncontrollable epilepsy, constant bullying and loneliness my entire life for said epilepsy, and a teacher who thought I was possessed by demons. If God has a plan for me, then boy oh boy do I have a plan for him if I ever get up there. Because he's kind of a dick. Epicurus wrote a logical proof about a few centuries before Jesus. One of the reasons they had to reboot the whole thing twice with New Testaments, it's a real storied franchise. Lot of history and lore to it. I recommend that you read a book called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. It is written by a rabbi. He struggled with this same issue, Judeo-Christian God. The upshot is as follows. We say that God is all-powerful. That he can do anything. I find this to be true in that he can give us direction and the strength and power to change ourselves and achieve almost anything. But this does not mean that he comes down and intercedes in the world and takes away our free will. The entire fabric of the universe would be changed if God stopped every drunk driver from killing people or fixed every cancer cell and imperfection. There is no such thing as good, if everything is good. The world is amazing, but in the relative sense imperfect. In the absolute sense, it is perfect. We do have free will. God gave us this amazing gift. If God were to be in control of everything, then there would not be free will. My take on God is everything has free will. from humans to the literal cells in your body. Something is bound to happen. God isn't real. Forget religious for a second. All life exists on a spectrum. So yes, some life is born with cancer and some life is born with DS. You cannot prevent this. This is what it means to be a human being. Life just is unfair. Sometimes it only exists to kick you while you're down. But that's why we keep fighting to make sure future kids can beat cancer. So that kids with autism and Downs can live better lives that the world can accommodate. Life sucks, so it's our job to try and make it better. Hey looky dat, someone discovered the problem of evil. Welcome to 2,000 years of debate by theologians. Which mythologies say that gods have a plan for everyone? I don't think that makes much sense. It's something that brings comfort to people. What's meant to be will be. Things like believing in fate, which is overwhelmingly viewed in a positive way. It's a lot of culture's way of making sense of things that don't make sense. Of providing a degree of comfort in awful circumstances. If God has a plan for everyone, how can anyone believe in free will? At some point one realizes that this God concept actually makes no sense at all, and is probably just something that people invented as a means to explain away stuff they couldn't find a solution to otherwise. See, I'm a Catholic, did not choose to be, but I was born into it. This is just one of the questions that I would like an answer to, because it's painful to think that some people are able to live long lives, some short, some really badly suffer. Like, why are we not born equal? Why is there a need for someone to suffer? You know, even without violence, let's say no violence involved. Like if I encounter someone who is only able to live for a few hours, the encounter would maybe teach me some lessons, but what good would it do for them? Just meet someone who's going to live longer than you, tell them something, make them realize something, and then what, die? If I learn about this person's suffering, I would grow to share people's feelings, understand them, be kind to them, again, teach me a lesson. But what's the point for the suffering person? It's painful to think that some are born to become some kind of plot devices to others. Maybe I am just too young to understand, but this sounds to me centered like it's God's plan for me to meet this suffering person so that I would appreciate life better. But what does that someone get from God? I would just want to understand as well. I'm not religious, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I assume the plan is of a greater scope than just the individual's earth-based experience. Perhaps their experience impacts the lives of other people in a specific way, or perhaps their experience continues on in some afterlife.